Have you ever gone to a party or an event and someone says to you, "What do you do?" And you say, "I own a lawn care business." And they say, "Cool." And that's sort of the end of the conversation. I've had this experience a bunch. I go to an event, somebody says, "What do you do?" I say, because I've owned lots of different businesses, I have a software company. They're interested. They immediately see me in a different way. They ask questions, we have a conversation. Or I say, "I've got a lawn care business." Generally, that conversation doesn't go anywhere. It's sort of the end of the conversation. It's a great way, I've found over many, many years, to basically not have to have a conversation with somebody I don't really care to have a conversation with. They're not that engaged. Do you have family, friends, parents who think you should get a real job? Who think maybe you should be in a real business, but it's not the lawn care or the landscape industry? Or maybe you're watching this and you're in a different trade and they think it's not the trade you're in. How many parents are telling their kids to go into plumbing or HVAC or pest control? Not a ton. People are clueless. They do not understand how incredibly successful these businesses can be, and how much wealth can be created, and how much annual income can be generated. They totally underestimate us, and they totally underestimate the businesses we're in. But you might also underestimate the business you're in. You might say to yourself, in your darkest hour when you're beat down, "Is this really the right industry? Should I be in that industry? Is this really a good business? Am I going to spend 5 more years wasting my time here and I should be doing something else?" And this is coming from the constant question over the years. Is the lawn care and landscape business really a good business? I hear you say good things and I hear you say bad things. Should I really get in the business? Should I stay in the business, or should we pivot out of the business and go into a different trade? Or should we get out of the trades in general and go into something completely different? The answer is you should stay the course. And if you're in lawn and landscape, you should stay. But if you stop listening now, odds are you'll stay and your business will be nothing special. My answer to you is they are great businesses. Lawn and landscape is a great business, but only if you do it in a very specific way. And I can give you that answer for almost every trade. There's no fix by going from lawn and landscape to HVAC, because there are tons and tons and tons of people that own HVAC companies and they suck. They're terrible. Yes, they have a higher hourly billing rate, but outside of that, they're really not good businesses. I can point at any business in the trades and show you that the majority of people don't actually own a good business. They just own a job. They're stressed out, they're tired, they're frustrated. They have all the exact same feelings in their industry that you have in yours. And so when you ask yourself, should I even go into this business? The answer is yes, but you have to do it in a specific way or you will get the outcome that 80% of people in the business get. 80% of people, I don't know the exact number, in the lawn and landscape industry don't have good businesses. They're exhausting, tiring, frustrating, and they really think they should be in something else. The people that have great businesses, they do it different. And when I say different, it's about business model. I think business model and the way you construct it is the name of the game. It's the key to success. I made a list of what constitutes a business model. I'm going to refer to this and I'm going to paste it into the comments. If you think about everything we're about to talk about and you construct your business in this way and you're in the lawn and landscape industry, you will have a great business and you will be happier in the business. And if somebody in the future sort of scoffs when you tell them what industry you're in, you won't care because you know that you're killing it compared to them. Like whatever their great fancy job is, it sucks compared to the world you're living in. So let's talk through this. So when I talk about business model, I'm going to go through a list here. At the very top of a business model consideration, so business model is how you construct your business. It's the definition of how you build the business. How is it going to look and work and operate? So at the very top of the list, I have target market. It comes down to thinking about who are you going after. Very simple analogy. You can go to a neighborhood where no one has any money. They have no disposable income. They want their house cleaned and their lawn mowed and their bugs killed and their hot water tank replaced. But they can want it all day long, every day of the week, but they have no money to pay for it. And you can spend as much money as you could possibly spend, and it will generate no work. They have all the desire in the world. They dream about having someone do this stuff for them. But they can't actually live the dream because they don't have any money. So every dollar you spend there is wasted money. Or conversely, you can go to a neighborhood where people have so much disposable income that they don't care about the price. What they care about is simplification in their life, getting the thing off their to-do list, being able to go to their kids' sporting events, being able to go out on the weekends, being able to take the trip, being able to come home from a busy work travel week and being exhausted and not having to do the thing, rather being able to go out to dinner on a Friday night or sit on the couch on a Friday night and watch Netflix. And they are willing to pay whatever they need to pay to not have one more thing on their to-do list. Those are two totally different worlds. And so when you think about a top-level decision in your business, you say, what is the best market to serve? You've probably heard me talk about this. This is the decision. So you're thinking about, who am I serving? Who has the money to buy my thing? I can either do it the hard way or I can do it the easy way. That's what it comes down to. Now, you might find, like we found, that there's many markets within markets. So as an example, you've got one market where they have so much disposable income, they can afford to pay you any amount of money to solve their problem. But you might say, hey, that's a good market, but that market's a little more challenging and troublesome than I care to deal with. There's a step down from that market where they too have a lot of disposable income, but they really value the money they spend, but they're just easier to work with. So there are lots and lots of markets. It's not just the extreme of they have no money versus they have money. There's even the area where, like, okay, they have the money, they can afford this thing, but they're not going to call me on a Thursday night and be pissed that we can't come take care of their property tomorrow without any warning to get ready for a party that they forgot to tell us about. So even within markets, maybe there are different expectation levels, friendlier people, more understanding. Who knows? You've got to find that market. And those markets vary all over the country. And they vary within counties. So when we talk about target market, we have decisions around, who am I going after? Another one is, are we going after commercial or residential? Those are two completely different businesses that I don't tend to see them working very well together. You usually build residential or you build commercial. So you want to think about, who am I serving? Who am I for? Who are my people? Who has money? Who can buy my thing? Who can buy whatever additional things I might want to sell them? That's target market. And you start there, because no amount of genius, you could be the greatest marketer in the world. If the person doesn't have the money and all they have is the want, you're going to think you suck. You're going to fail, and you're going to think you're not actually a good marketer or a good salesperson. They just don't have the money. So that's where we start with the business model consideration. Did you start your business in the neighborhood you live, where you grew up, and it just isn't a great market? And if that's the case, you need to move and get an apartment where there's a good market, and you need to build your business there. It will be painful. You don't want to do it, but it will go so much better. Next, what's your core service offering? This is a business model consideration. Are we offering recurring services? Are we offering one-time services? Are we offering lawn mowing, landscape, pest control, fertilization, weed control, lighting? What are we doing? And you have to think through that. And one of my core messages is this idea of simplification. So if you're just getting started, then what is the easiest service for you to offer so that you can just get clients and start making money? I tend to argue for lawn mowing. I don't think lawn mowing is a great long-term service. I don't think you can build a great multi-million dollar super high profit business doing lawn mowing. But what I do love about lawn mowing is it's one of the easiest ways to get into the industry and get started. It's not expensive to buy the equipment, it's not hard to figure out how to do the service, and it's not hard to sell. It's one of the absolute easiest of all service offerings to sell. More people need their lawn mowed than they need their pool cleaned. More people need their lawn mowed than they need bugs killed. Lawn mowing is an easy service to sell. So I tend to love it as a gateway. It's a starting place to start the business. I also love it as a gateway to get a client. It's way easier to sell a client lawn mowing than it is to sell them some other service, such as landscape installation. More people need mowing than they need a new backyard. And so it's the easiest, cheapest thing to sell them to make them your client. And once you make them your client and they like and trust you, then you can sell them other services they need. Trimming their bushes, killing their weeds, killing their bugs, installing that landscape. And so this is an example of thinking through from a business model standpoint, what services are we going to offer? So I think about it as, okay, what would be if I'm just getting started, I have no money and I don't really have a lot of experience, what would be the easiest thing for me to get started in? And I will tell myself that that's where I'm starting, and as fast as I can, I'm going to level up my skill set so that I can add more and more services that are of higher and higher margin. Or another way I'll think about it is I'm coming into a market. It's really hard to get clients and build a business. What would be the easiest thing to sell them? What's that? I'm going to use some words you may not be familiar with. What's that front end offering? What's that very first thing I can offer them to make them a client and take them off the market, meaning they're no longer shopping for someone else to perform a service. So I can come in and I can make this client mine by selling them, in my example, lawn mowing. And then I have a back end offer. The back end is what are the additional things that I sell them to expand the value of that relationship. So initially I sell them mowing. That was the easiest way to make them a client. After that, I sell them fertilization, weed control, pest control, arbor care, whatever other services I want to sell them. That's the back end. I made them a client by selling them mowing, and then I sell them additional services to make them more valuable, expand the value of that client to my business. That's a strategy. And that strategy requires you to understand the market you're going after, the target market, and it requires you to think about what services are we going to sell. Additionally, when I'm thinking about the services I'm going to sell, not only am I thinking about what's the easiest thing to sell them to make them a client, and then what could I fairly easily sell them to make them more valuable, I'm also considering what services can I most easily find people to perform the work? What services will be easiest to train people on? What services are going to have the highest margin? One of the reasons why I believe pest control is so popular is it's a really, really easy service to sell. Not as easy as mowing, in my opinion, but an easy service to sell and a really easy service to deliver. It's not a difficult service, and your CapEx, probably shouldn't be using that term, but your financial investment to get into the service, to buy the truck, to buy the tank, that's capital expenditure. So the money you have to spend to get in, it's pretty low. And so you're thinking about all those things from a service offering. What's easy to sell? What's affordable to get into? Will I be able to find employees? Does it have a high margin, meaning we'll be able to make a bunch of profit so that we can take the cash that's generated, that's essentially profit, and reinvest it back into the business to grow faster and faster? Do we focus on recurring revenue? Do we focus on one time? I've always been attracted to recurring revenue because I only have to sell it once. So if I have to sell every job and it's a big high ticket job, then a couple things happen. I need a more sophisticated sales team that will be more expensive. Whereas if I'm selling a lesser expensive recurring service, maybe I can just sell it over the phone. It's an entirely different internal structure and expense to my business in terms of how I build the business. Also, if it's one time, I've got to fight for every single job, and I never stop fighting for it. If it's one time, I know that business or installation type, construction type work, I know the business is less valuable if I ever want to sell it. If it's a super high end offering and maybe it's the average sales price is, call it $50,000, I know it's more susceptible to a recession or a financial downturn. I'm not telling you which direction to go. I'm just telling you these are examples of things you think about. There are a million different ways to build a business. You could start out mowing lawns with the desire to eventually get to very high-end construction. That's a phenomenal strategy because you can make a lot of money in high-end construction. But my argument is, within a business model, within the construction of a business model, you're thoughtful about this. It could take you years and years to get there, but you've thought through, how do I want to construct this business to position me to be as successful as possible? So back to what I said earlier, what does the typical person do? So by earlier, I mean when you don't feel like you're getting any respect for being in the business you're in. Well, what happens? Most people get into the industry, and we'll use lawn mowing as an example, and they get stuck just mowing lawns. And they never progress out of mowing lawns. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be respected. But what it does potentially mean is you may not be able to make the kind of income and build the kind of business you want because mowing itself is so unbelievably competitive. It's so difficult, and by competitive, it means the price is suppressed because everybody's underbidding. They don't know what they should be charging. And so you can only charge so much for that offering, that service. And it's really difficult to find people. And so for that reason, it's just a difficult business to build it very big. And because you don't build it very big, you never have enough money to go hire people to help you build the business. And so the idea is, how do you think bigger about this and say, okay, we're starting with mowing. We're going to go hardcore and get X number of clients. And with that many clients, I'll probably be able to sell 40% of them and fill up a truck for fertilization weed control. Sort of thinking about like that. That's business model construction. If you move to the next category, and again, you can look in the comments, I think about price strategy. So price strategy is, how do we charge? Are we putting everyone under a contract? Are we pay as you go, meaning pay as I perform the work? If I mow the lawn, I get paid. Or are we selling a contract? If I mow the lawn, I'm still getting paid the same amount because I in advance sold you an agreement that we're going to mow 40 times a year. So whether I show up or not, I'm still getting the same check every month because I've basically put you under a contract saying we're mowing X number of times a year. Are you on a subscription model? Much like the Netflix model. So we just charge you $48.75 per month for this service, fertilization weed control, 12 months of the year. You might also think of that as installment billing. So what's your pricing model? Because your pricing model also has a massive impact on your success. The pricing that the Disney Channel does, or Netflix, or any software system that's highly successful and a known name, any of those brands, they've put tremendous amount of thought into pricing. Pricing is not this accidental thing. Pricing is a huge component of a business. And the thought that goes into what is the price, but also how do we build a client? Do we build them monthly? Do we build them per service? Lots of thought goes into that. So don't let that just be a thing you do quickly. You gloss over it and then you're back to the business. As an example, in our business, we started out as contract and we pivoted to pay as you go. So you only pay for what we perform. You pay, and we auto charge your credit card each week. So if we mow your lawn, we auto charge your credit card. If we don't mow your lawn, we don't get paid. There are pros and cons. A major con to that is if there's a drought and we don't mow one week because of instead of mowing weekly, we're now bi-weekly, well, that hurts our revenue. Now, that doesn't happen to us very often, but that can happen. If there's too much rain and we perform fewer services in a given week, we make less revenue. That is a downside. The upside is when I'm having a conversation with a prospect and I want to put them in a contract, and the contract is, call it $500 a month, $6,000 a year. It is a very different conversation to talk about $6,000 a year, or let's just get you started mowing your lawn for $45 a week. Those are two entirely different conversations. And oh, by the way, we'll get you started for $45 a week. And if you don't love it and we don't live up to everything we said we'd do for you, you can cancel next week. Zero risk. They don't have to have a conversation with their spouse. They don't have to sign anything. They don't have to make a family decision. We can sell them on the phone. So there are pros and cons to every decision you make in your business, be it geography, what services you offer, how you price your services, how you bill your services. We, at our business, put a lot of thought into these things. And we said, we think we can go faster if we can sell over the phone, and we charge your credit card as soon as we do the work, and we don't put you in a contract. And we believe that we can even sell more if maybe we just sell you the additional services when you need them, when you have pain. So instead of trying to sell you ant control in December, what if we can sell you ant control in April when you actually have fire ant piles in your backyard? It's that kind of a thinking. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you a framework by which to think about constructing your business model and the questions you want to ask yourself. And you don't have to ask yourself all these questions and figure all this out on day one. What you want to do is you want to have a mindset of iteration. So you want to get started in the business, and then you want to iterate and improve your target market, your service offering, the way you do your pricing, how you bill services, things of that sort. You also want to think about, from a business model construction standpoint, revenue streams. So where is the money coming from? And I've kind of alluded to this, but when I think about revenue streams, and the way I'm referring to it is, there's a revenue stream that comes from selling a client mowing. I just sell them one service to make them a client. Once they're a client, if we deliver great service and they like and trust us, they want us to solve all of their other problems. So now, and this isn't manipulative, this is just how it works. Now, because they like and trust us and they want us to solve all their other problems, whenever we identify a problem, or when they identify a problem, who are they going to think of first? They're going to think of us. Another business model consideration is your profit margin. And this one overlaps with several other areas, such as your pricing strategy, and then one I'm going to talk about in a moment called brand positioning. And what I mean by this is, when you're thinking about profit, are you the high cost provider in the market? Are you the low cost provider in the market? So this one crosses several different boundaries. It even touches on, who are you serving? Who's your target client? So for example, if you're serving a very upscale market, then being the low cost provider really makes almost 0 sense. My position on this one, from a business model standpoint, is you want to be pricing in the top 70%, top 30% of the market, maybe top 20% of the market. Especially in the trades, especially in the lawn and landscape industry, where underpricing is so prevalent. That means that you need to be pricing more towards the top of the market. I don't think generally at the very top of the market, although that's part of the strategy. Do you want to be the premium, high price company in the market? And that is a great, perfectly acceptable strategy. In my case, I tend to think, and this is the beauty of constructing a business model, you figure out what it is for you, but I tend to be attracted to being in the top 30% of the market from a pricing standpoint. There's no doubt about it. By being a bit lower on price, it makes it much easier to sell. More people will buy from you. The problem is, as you bring your price down too low, you won't generate a lot of profit, therefore you won't generate a lot of cash, therefore it'll be very hard to grow your business. The other problem is, the less money you make, well, the lower quality team you'll be able to hire. The less frequent you'll be able to replace your trucks. the less you'll be able to replace your equipment, the less marketing you'll be able to do, the less you'll be able to pay your sales team. The more you charge the client, and I'm not talking about gouging the client or being unfair, but the more you charge the client, the more money you have to invest in great people, great trucks, great equipment, great marketing, great salespeople, great office support, great customer service, etc. If you own a company with great service, great quality, great people, do you think you'll end up with a great business? I would say yeah. And so by pricing higher, you'll be able to have a much better business. You'll be able to provide to your client a much better outcome. And as a result, your marketing will work better, your sales will work better, you'll get a lot more clients. And so trying to be the low-cost provider is a losing strategy. So much like there are differing target markets you can serve, even in a high-end market, there are different markets within that market. It's kind of the same thing here. You have to say, where do I want to fit in from a pricing standpoint? Low-cost provider, high premium price, just below high premium. You got to think about where you want to fit in, and then you construct your pricing model around that. And now your delivery, your service delivery, be it customer service, be it quality of the service being delivered, has to match that pricing. If those two don't match, you've got a problem. It's not going to work. You can't just be, as you know, the high-price provider with a lousy service offering. That's just not going to work. You will quickly go out of business. And so you take that money that you make as being a bit higher priced in the market and you reinvest it in the business to make the business better. That's the concept. But you've got to, this doesn't happen by accident. You have to think about it. You have to choose to be a higher priced company. I'm not talking top end, but even to be in the top 20 or 30% pricing, that's a decision you have to make. And then when you make that decision, you have to take that money and invest in making your company deliver a service that matches what you're charging. Next, your selling model. I've alluded to this one a bit as well. And the selling model is going to be determined by, are you residential? Are you commercial? If you're commercial, it's probably an outbound selling model. It's a boots on the ground, out in the field selling, meeting with HOAs, meeting with facility managers. If you're selling residential, is it, again, a salesperson because you're selling high-end construction, expensive projects, or you're selling maintenance agreements that are thousands of dollars, and so it requires an in-person conversation because it's a bigger decision for the family? Or are you selling just mowing, or fertilization weed control, or pest control? And it's a much more simple decision. Maybe you're selling a property type that can be priced over the phone without going and rolling the truck and doing a physical estimate. You have to figure out what is that selling model. And in figuring out the other things I've described that are part of the business model, you'll figure out what the selling model is. Depending on who you're serving, how you're pricing, are you putting them into contracts or not, that will tell you what kind of person or team you need to construct to go sell. In our case, and I'm not saying you do it this way, because again, I started in contracts, I started in commercial, I started out selling contracts. Even when I went to residential, I was doing contracts, and then we pivoted to only focusing on smaller properties in a very specific geographic area. We shrunk it way down. We changed our entire billing model to charge you, when we did the service, we charge it by credit card. We sold you only a couple services, 1 or 2 or 3 services when you called in. And we usually sold you right over the phone. We looked up the square footage, priced you right over the phone. We didn't have to roll a truck and do an estimate. Once you were a client, we'd go out and see you if we needed to do an estimate. But we completely changed the business model. And by making those decisions, it allowed our business to grow fast. And it brought down our cost structure. We didn't need as many salespeople. We didn't need as many estimators. It allowed us to get to people more quickly, and therefore we could close the business before a competitor got there to give them a quote. It was a competitive advantage. All of that was a business model consideration. Our selling model, without question, was based on the target market we served, what services we offered, how we priced, how we billed. That helped us define our selling model. And that selling model, because it became so simple, allowed us to go fast and build a different kind of business. The next one is, what's your service delivery look like? How do you deliver the work? Are you running 1-man, 3-man, 5-man teams? That's a lot of work to figure out in and of itself. Forever, we ran 3-man teams. And then we found that 2-man teams were more efficient. 1-man teams can be really good as well, but that's just a different problem in that if you run a lot of 1-man teams, then you need a lot more trucks and a lot more equipment. If you run 2-man teams, you need fewer trucks, less equipment. And what do trucks and equipment mean? They mean you need a lot more cash outlay. You need a lot more cash to go buy all the trucks and equipment. And so there's this balancing act of where do you start bumping up against inefficiencies because you have too many people on the property? And where do you gain tons of efficiency because you have, in my example, one person on the property, but now you have a new problem. To scale the business big, you need way more money to buy all the trucks and all the equipment. And then you've just got all kinds of new expenditures in the one-person model that might be the most efficient. And then there's a question mark of, is it even the most efficient? And so you might get into doing time studies to figure out how many people equals the most efficient business. And so that's an example of service delivery and thinking through that. Again, you don't have to have all the answers up front. You're thinking iteration over time. And again, why am I telling you all of this? Because if you're asking yourself, is this business a business worth being in? I am telling you the answer is a resounding yes if you think about it this way. And if you don't think about it this way, almost no business you go into, no trade, no business will be a good business. The people that have great businesses that make a lot of money, they're intentional. Or maybe they accidentally stumbled into that business over 10 and 20 years and they don't really know how they got there. They just got there by modeling what was working in the market. But what happened is it took them a very long time to get there. Whereas had they known what to do and known how to think about this, they could have got there. They could have got the business they wanted in half the time. Next, what's your customer acquisition strategy? How do you get clients? Are you getting them from door knocking, from SEO, from LSA, from Google ads, from Facebook, from organic social campaigns? What is your strategy? And I would tell you that the strategy is going to be a tiered strategy. You're going to start out doing the cheapest things you can possibly do. Website, SEO, yard signs, door hangers, referrals. They saw your truck because it's wrapped. And then you're going to progress as you start to build up a little bit of money to things like LSA and gift cards and maybe some door knocking and who knows what else. And there's going to be a progression as you have more money where you do more and more sophisticated forms of marketing that cost more and more money. But your customer acquisition strategy absolutely matters. Next, your retention strategy. I think of retention strategy as being intentional about establishing a first impression with the client. So as an example, what are the things we're doing to create a great relationship with the client where they like us and they trust us and they don't leave us? Well, I think part of that, and our belief has always been spending money on customer service, spending lots of money on training the individuals that go out in the field to do the work. So around quality. That just seems incredibly obvious to us. It's like really invest in service, really invest in customer service in the office, really invest in service delivery. The customer will like you, the customer will trust you, the customer will most likely stay with you. But there's another level. From a psychological standpoint, how do you, as soon as you make a client, get off on the very best footing? What's that? What they would call the first impression strategy. How do you wow them? How do you build a relationship from the beginning where whatever the experience is that client has with you, whenever you do make a mistake later, and it will happen, it's impossible that there will never be a day that you don't make a mistake. But what you want to create is a situation where from the beginning, they had such a good experience with you that then when there is a mistake later, it's like, oh, well, this is not how they operate. I understand that. That was just a mistake. Versus if the beginning of the relationship is started and from the beginning, the service level's low, the quality's low, you don't arrive on time, you don't show up on the right day, the equipment breaks, you got to come back and finish the job. Whatever the scenario is, the first impression in those first few weeks is like, I don't know. Every subsequent mistake you will make will, to the client, just feel like, well, yeah, this is how they operate. This is who they are. Like, this is kind of how it started. And so being intentional from a retention strategy is partly about being intentional about that first impression, wowing them from the beginning, getting off on the very best footing possible so that any future mistake is seen as, well, this is unusual. This is not how they operate. I'm sure that they'll get this fixed and we'll be back to the normal level of service. This doesn't happen accidentally, and that's the point I'm trying to make. And even that is part of your business model. How's your team structured? What does management look like? Do you have ops managers? What's your sales team look like? What's your internal office team look like? Much of the team structure evolves over time. You don't need these answers in the beginning, but as you evolve the business, you're absolutely thinking about this. Do we have a training team? Do we have people on the team who are more senior whenever a new team member is hired? They're paired up with an individual, and that's the individual that trains them in the field. When somebody joins the office team, is there a person that is good at explaining things and very patient that new team members can shadow and they can listen in on phone calls? Do we have a structure where we have people that can listen in and score calls and give coaching? Like, what is our model? What's the office team look like? What's the field team look like? What's management look like? That's part of your business model. Brand positioning. I sort of touched on this one. Brand positioning is, how are you going to be perceived in the marketplace? Are you going to be perceived as premium, trustworthy, super fast, the cheap service, inexpensive service provider? Any of those are acceptable. And you might even say to yourself, well, of course we'd be perceived as trustworthy. And I would say to that, well, yeah, we all want to be perceived as the highest level of service, the highest level of quality, the fairest price, trustworthy. We want to be perceived of all those things, of course. But are we really doing all the actions required to actually end up with that outcome? If we look at a lot of the businesses in industry, I don't think most people are saying, I want to be perceived as unreliable, cheap, not dependable, not trustworthy. I don't think almost anybody is saying that. And so it's imperative that you think through that strategy and you build the business you want to build. And finally, back-end systems. Are you going to be a company that pieces together lots of different software systems and lots of different training methods and lots of different performance tracking? Or are you going to be a company that spends the money, that has an underlying architecture of technology and accounting and training systems, and those systems are sophisticated and your team is well trained on them so that you can run an incredibly efficient company that delivers excellence to your client? These are decisions that need to be made. They're part of your model. They're part of who are you as a company. Most people are not intentional about any of these things, and they just slowly happen over time and they get pieced together, and as a result, they have subpar businesses. And so when you question if this is the industry you should be in or go into, I would tell you that if you follow this concept and if you construct a business model that meets these requirements, you will have incredible success in this industry. You will end up with a business that is very different from everyone else and a business that you will be incredibly proud of. And if you ever go to a party and you say, I'm in the lawn care business, and somebody's like, whatever, and they snub you, you'll just laugh to yourself because you'll know you're killing it as compared to them.